Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan, I'm your host, and today, guys, we are going to be talking about automation. Now, I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn, and yes, more and more of my posts are going to come from LinkedIn and me trolling it. I write a bunch of articles, ton of posts there pretty much every day. So more and more of my content is going to kind of stem from there. So that's how I'm creating articles and posts and podcasts and all that kind of good stuff. And you're going to see a ton more from us this year, or everything. Like at Vertical Design Services, we're doing a ton with more and more design build contractors. You'll see some more content come from us there. Some really cool things that we'll be doing here later this year. And then on the Cowabunga Studio side and automation, we've got some cool announcements that we'll be talking about here shortly. But today, again, talking about automation. The post that kind of triggered this was within the automation and AI realm, you talk about, reducing people or eliminating people. And like I kind of heated and upset about, if there's an industry that's talking about removing people, that you shouldn't go to work in that industry. And it begs some very interesting questions that I think we should talk about and go through in depth. So with this and kind of with the post and article that I've written about this is like, look, when you talk about automation and AI, those are two very different things. AI is something that's self-learning, self replicating in a way. Like automation is basically if this, then do that, and that's pretty much what AI is today for the most part. Just very, very big trees of if-then statements. And then able to kind of interpret, what you're saying and regurgitate things back to you and give images, and that kind of stuff. But it's basically big if-thens, and then able to, interpolate that out to like images or Word documents or sales letters or anything like that, right? So data in, hey, here's the top performings of these. It, should look like this, right? Like it's just big if-then statements, not, there's no real general intelligence today that's accessible to the public that I know of. Anyway, so next is on to like the people question. But really in all of this, the things that and how I frame a lot of this stuff is I'm asking questions within the topics that I talk about, within the podcasts that I release, within all the things that I put out, because I want you guys to ultimately think for yourself too. Like this shouldn't just be Dylan and Dylan's opinion. I'm going to give it to you, but I want to also ask questions throughout these podcasts, through the articles that I write, through the posts that I create, because again, you need to form your own opinion around some of this stuff and not just mindlessly follow somebody's deal on the internet, even if that is mine, right? Like you've got to be able to think for yourself to formulate your own opinion, have your own answers, your own rebuttals for all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't. So here we go, right? First question is, do you use AI or not? And then the deeper question to that is, do you know you're using AI or not, right? Or automation or not? And I'm just going to use AI and automation interchangeably in here. So just as we move forward, understand that. So really, there are many veins for this question. Do you use automation of any kind? And what do you define as automation, right? Or AI? What are you for? What are you against? And again, do you mindlessly parrot the words someone on the internet has given you that you're vehemently against automation and AI, and you cannot conceivably think of it, or it is the greatest thing ever and we should use all of it, and please give me more automation. So there's a lot of automations in AI that have been around for a long time that we use and we don't even think about it. So ATM, automated teller machine, right? Don't even think about that. The automated checkout at the grocery store, the automatic email responders, right? Automated email responders to say that you're out of office or on vacation or whatever. Or I'm just not responding to email anymore and contact Susie because she'll take care of you, right? Whatever that is. There's a lot of automations that we have. Um, there's automated things in banking for sure, right? If your check got deposited, if your overdraft fees, or if you overdrafted your account, if a new check landed, if fraud got detected on your account, right? There's all these things that are automated processes behind the scenes, that Visa or whoever, right, does. And then you get a call saying, hey, somebody hacked your card, right? That's an automated process. And then, they shoot you an email or call you or whatever to say, hey, your shit's been hacked. Go get a new card. So there's scheduling assistance to book a meeting that has all your calendar that somebody can see all the times, and then automatically sends all the calendar invites and books the meeting, right? All that stuff is automatic. So we all use automation in some way, shape, or form. It's done in everything that we pretty much do. And then even to your cars, right? You've got the little alarm that says if you don't plug in your seatbelt, it's going to beep at you, right? If you're backing up and you're close to hitting something, sound an alarm. If you depart from a lane, vibrate the seat and pull the wheel back over. If you turn on automatic driving, keep the car between the lanes and drive ahead of you. If you have that annoying adaptive cruise control, right? If the person in front of you brakes, then you brake, and you're going to keep this distance from that car, right? All those things are automations of some sort, right? Some intelligence built into the tools that we're using. And it's even like in, this podcast, I upload it to a site and then it automatically distributes it out to all the other sites, iTunes, Spotify, Google, the 7, 8 podcast sites. And then it automatically pushes it to your phone so that you can listen to it, right? There's automations and intelligence and a lot of the things that we use. And so like being vehemently against it is just a very dumb position to hold, because you use it all day, all the time, without maybe even realizing it, right? If you send any of those big blast emails, that is an automation, right? To send it to your 1,000-person or 10 million or however big your list is of people, it automatically sends all those emails out in batches and whatever. So it doesn't, put risk against your domain. Like there's so many things that are automatically done that we just don't even think about, right? That humans at some point either had to do manually or like never existed. Again, email is a very new thing in the last 35 years, 40 years. So the thing then when it comes to business, right? And do you implement automation or not, is a return on cost of capital, right? So if you have a bucket of money that you have to spend, right? Your revenue minus your overhead, and basically any other costs associated with doing business, that you need to allocate that profit. You have some that needs to get paid in taxes because, the IRS has to get their piece too. And we all work till August to pay our taxes, basically. Not to mention all the other taxes like, employment tax, Social Security tax, gas tax, road tax, sales tax, income tax, death tax, tax, all the taxes that everybody's paying. That basically adds up to like 50-60% of your income, right? Your car tax to even just have a car, the insurance tax to, you must have insurance to drive your car, your property tax, like all the things. So in business you have, and like engineering in particular, you have this whole cost of capital thing, which in more advanced markets and more advanced finance is basically what people talk about, right? What is your return on cost of capital? When you start looking at venture and private equity funds, this is what they end up talking about, right? What's the cost to start up a new business? What are the people costs? What does a person expect to return the business in money? Right? How much can they produce? What is the net profit per individual within the firm? Like all of these are numbers that, again, as much as we want to humanize a lot of this stuff, like it does come down to dollars and cents. Because if you hire somebody that the business can't afford, the business goes under, everybody's out of work, you can't, it's not viable, right? Like that doesn't work. And you're not a charity. Like you are exchanging your services for dollars. And if the dollars that you get in are not greater than the expense it takes to deliver that service, you will go under. And you're not supported by public markets and debt and all the other stuff. So unfortunately, you're just not going to be a business that survives. So for engineers to hire, an engineer that makes 100, 125 grand, you're really looking at $200,000 in the first year for that person. 30,000 of that is going to be a placement fee. So the recruiting firm is going to get 30% of their salary as their fee to place a candidate. So if they're making 125, that's going to be like 37 grand. So that $37,000 is going to go to the recruiting firm. So now you're at 152, 155 grand to place a candidate. And that's just, again, 1 year's worth of salary plus the recruiting fee. Then you're going to have to potentially relocate them. That might be another 10 or 15 grand. You're going to need to buy them a laptop, all their, supplies basically to have a seat in your office. And then you're paying rent for that person as well. So they're, the cost for them to have a desk, computer, all that basically adds up. And then on top of their salary, you have benefits. So whatever their health insurance premiums are, which is probably another 15 to 20 grand a year. Any retirement matches that you put in there. So you're really looking at like 200 grand for that person to join your firm for a year. So when you look at that, that's a huge cost that the firm has to basically pretty much guarantee that they're going to be able to make money on that individual, even if they do just stay for a year. So the business needs to think about that return on capital. And is hiring a new person worth it? Or do you look at, improving the productivity of your team by 20, 30, 40, 50% and doing that? And can you do that with some tools and some automation to ultimately make them more productive, right? That's ultimately what you're looking about, is what if everybody had a scheduling tool and you use scheduling assist or somebody to help coordinate that, and admin help to do that, the person you already have, and that takes 20 minutes out of everybody's schedule for every meeting that they have, and they have a meeting a week. What does that ultimately look like, right? Like you start to stack this stuff up, or hey, we just remove all recurring meetings, or we only have a daily stand up for the team, and then project meetings are booked for everybody on Thursdays so that we maximize the productivity the other 4 days of the week for everybody so that they can pound out projects. Like there's ways to do this to where you can increase productivity 20, 30, 40%, 50%, just with the people you have, right? This takes different systems, processes, but ultimately it's doable. And so the thing that you might be wondering is like, well, how is this actually doable? Is it doable? What does that look like? And the question too comes down to like, is this physically impossible, right? Is there laws of physics preventing us from doubling productivity? What are the things that we would need to put in place to double productivity? Would it cost us more to double productivity than add a person, right? Like adding a person, pulls 40 hours off, but if you have a team of 4, right, and you were able to improve them 25%, right, that's 10 hours per times 4, there's your extra 40 hours. So if you can improve productivity by 25% with a 4-person team, that's a equivalent of adding a person, right? 200 grand. But if you could do that for 50 grand, you just saved 150 grand on year 1 of that person, right? So it's simple math like this that really makes a huge difference in what you're able to do as a firm, and then effectively deploy capital to make the business more profitable, which means that people can get paid more because they're more productive. They do more in the same amount of time. And that's ultimately what you're looking to do through your team. Because again, because an individual person costs more to a business today than it did years ago. And frankly, prices have not gone up to match what the increase in the cost of labor is. You're stuck with each individual person doing more projects to ultimately get the same constant dollar value out at the end, right? So 20 years ago, we got paid effectively the same amount in projects. The expense of a person was less, right? Their salaries, overhead, all the insurance costs, like all the other stuff that most people don't see on their paycheck was considerably less. So therefore, a company had more profit, more margin that they had to work with. Taxes were less, all the other stuff was less 20 years ago. So therefore, you had more money to then allocate on the backside to grow, or you could add more people. You could afford to have more people in your processes to get projects done. Today, the cost of a person is very high. And so with that, you have to get more out of your people to ultimately do the same amount of projects, because frankly, you're not getting paid much more to do projects today than you were 20 years ago. So you're stagnated your costs, or your costs have risen dramatically. Your revenue has stagnated. And so you're stuck with a smaller margin on projects. So therefore, you have to do more projects to equal the same amount of dollars, adjusted for inflation. Again, this is like a very complicated topic, but the simplicity of it is like, look, firms aren't getting paid more to do a given project. The cost to do the project has gone up in the design world and even in the labor market. And we've seen that on projects because, again, labor is more expensive, materials are more expensive, rent's more expensive. All those things are more expensive. So you have, again, higher costs, prices are about the same, reduced margins to operate with, and taxes and everything else have gone up. So a firm now, because they basically can't hire people, right? They're financially limited into the amount that they can hire, or the talent that they get for the dollars that they're willing to spend is so low that they would need more of those people. So they're ultimately paying more in labor rather than getting somebody that's very well qualified. But again, at the same time, it's hard to justify that cost, and you don't know if that person is ultimately going to perform or not. So really, you're kind of stuck with the team that you have, the people that you've brought in, and then you're trying to feel like, okay, well, how can we put more through this system? And this is ultimately where automation comes in. Is the only way that the firm is going to survive is you have to be more effective and efficient with the processes that you have, right? So we go back to increasing that margin. So again, if you're not going to get paid anymore for the projects that you do, you've got to be able to increase the margin. So reduce the costs in doing a project. So that means doing them faster, more efficiently, right? So that people spend less time on a given project, even with their, higher overhead rate. So again, in simple rate terms, 20 years ago, your billable rate might have been 100. Today, that's 150, 175, $200. So now it's, again, 50% more, 70% more in your overhead rate that you have to apply to projects. So now you want them to work half, 3/4 of what they used to on that same project. And the only way to do that is either you use some automation tools to increase their productivity, or you give to somebody that has a cheaper labor rate, and hopefully they can do the same amount of work that like an automation tool or something would do. And then the senior person, can basically make up the difference. But that's ultimately what we're getting at here is you have these just very difficult financial problems to work through. And so automation is about the only way out, because you can't afford to hire more people. You can't find more people. Labor market's really tight in construction. So again, this is a complicated topic in like, what do you automate? How do you automate? What does it cost to automate? Are you actually going to get the productivity bumps that are promised through that automation? Then would it allow you to hire more people down the road to do more projects? The answer is more than likely yes. However, you've got to put this in and run it for a while, to see that your margins are where they need to be so that you can hire another person to run the automation tools, to manage more projects, to take on more workload down the line. So at the end of the day, this ends up being very much a dollars and cents standpoint of doing that. And then, are you going to get paid back the money on that automation tool? So like for Cowabunga Studios and all the automation tools that we have, you're basically augmenting a person. So for every person that you give the tool to, if you in trying it and the numbers that you come up with are saying that, hey, we can increase productivity 25, 30, 40%, 50%, whatever it is, in your mind for that. Let's just say it's 30%. Well, so now whatever it costs for a person, and if you want to use that full $200,000 number, then you're looking at like 65 grand, right? 180, 195, 100, well, so $67,000 to is a third in productivity. So you could effectively, put 67 grand towards it. Or if you just took their, salary of 125 and times 0.3, so you're looking at 40 grand worth of tools to basically improve their productivity. So anything under 40 grand is break even or really plus margin on that deal. So like for our productivity pack, if you paid 10 grand for that person to add 30% productivity, so 125 plus 40, so it's $160,000 worth of person now that you paid an extra 10 for. So you're plus 30 grand on that person in productivity value per year, not to mention what they could actually produce in revenue. So, or just say that they added a third of a person, and your annual revenue that you can generate per person would be 400 grand. So now you're looking at 130 grand per person in additional net revenue that you're able to bring into the firm because of automation tools. That's another way to look at it as well. So again, however you slice this, like you're going to make money on automation so long as you use the tools, you put them to use, and you think through these systems. And again, increasing your margin. That's the bottom line here. We want to increase the margin on each and every one of our projects. The only way to do that is to get more efficient. The only way to get more efficient, unfortunately, today, or fortunately for Cowabunga Studios, but we've been at this a long time before automation was a thing, is that you're going to have to use automation tools to increase your margins on projects, to ultimately get more throughput, to ultimately go after and do more projects because you have the marketing dollars to do so now, to, again, continue that cycle of do more projects, hire more people, grow the firm, become better, all that kind of stuff. So automation is about the only way that you can increase your margins moving forward, and however you want to do that, right? There's a ton of tools out there for simple scheduling or email writing, or, Revit automation is obviously our specialty at Cowabunga Studios. So however you want to go about this, you're going to have to use automation tools to improve your workflows. Same on the construction side, you're going to have to use automation of some sort, whether that's automated, land clearing, bulldozers, skid steers, all that kind of stuff, robotics and doing some of that, job site walk dogs, things like that, to really up your productivity levels across jobs, is all the stuff that you've got to look at to really boost your margins. So start to implement and use technology in your workflows and processes so that you're then able to increase your margins, make more money, pay your people more, do more projects, and ultimately hire more people. So that's the loop that you want to be on. But to do that, you need to start with good margins. So implement automation in your workflows and you'll be richer for it. That, my friends, is this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Until next time.